Hi. Recently, a viewer who goes by the name of KGR asked me about how I write material for these videos. And since other viewers have commented on that pretty frequently, I thought it'd be good to talk about it a bit. Anyhow, here's the usual roadmap for the material in this video. And as usual, you can find this same roadmap in the description section of this video along with links to the timestamps. Anyhow, as you might well infer, this video will probably take the form of a personal reflection, especially since writing and language tend to be pretty personal matters. So maybe the first question is, why do I go to all the trouble to craft actual text for these videos rather than just speaking extemporaneously? Well, at one level, the answer is that I want to avoid wasting your time, which I see as something inherently valuable. That's because even if it takes only a few minutes to watch one of my videos, you're actually expending an irreplaceable part of your life doing it. Basically, the unsettling reality of our existential lot is that once you or I spend a few minutes of our lives a certain way, those moments are gone forever. And so I feel the weight of a very personal kind of responsibility for how my videos might occupy a tiny part of your life, and maybe even weave themselves into the larger fabric of your existence in one way or another. And because I feel that kind of responsibility, I don't want to offer you something slapdash or sloppy or only marginally articulate. Instead, I want every word to mean something and to contribute something worthwhile to the overall message I'm trying to convey. And basically, that's why I take the time and energy to craft actual text for you instead of just blathering on extemporaneously. It's because I want to honor your willingness to listen to what I have to say and to spend a few minutes of your life with me that you'll never get back once they're gone. I write because in those few fleeting moments drifting improbably within the vast ocean of all time, I want to give you the best of myself. And it seems to me that the best way of doing that, the best way of honoring your time, is to write in a way that combines my passion for clarity with my equally ardent love of unbridled poetic abandon. And so when I write, I'm basically trying to balance several desires at the same time. On one hand, I want what I say to feel familiar and accessible. But at the same time, I want it to feel strange and sometimes almost otherworldly. The way I see it, if you can't relate to my videos in terms of the familiarity of your own personal experience, well, you're probably not going to go along for the rest of the ride. But on the other hand, if my videos never take you anywhere surprising, if they never help you see things in some new, unexpected way, well, then what's the actual point of watching them in the first place? And so when I write, I usually feel like I'm using language in a peculiar, double-sided way. On one hand, I'm writing to be understood. But on the other hand, I'm trying to speak to the part of you that thirsts for intellectual adventure, for transcendence, and for exploring the further reaches of life as we know it. Of course, that's not necessarily an easy balance to strike, but in my mind, it's still worthwhile, even if I don't always achieve it in practice. Anyhow, while I'm at it, maybe I should also tell you about some general factors that influence my style of writing. First, as is probably evident from all the etymology lessons I weave into my videos, I'm definitely influenced by the years I spent studying Latin and then classical Greek when I was young. And the biggest thing I took from those years was a deep and abiding appreciation for the etymological underpinnings of the English language. Basically, the way that words are bearers of many hidden intimations and distant echoes from human history, most especially at the level of connotation. And studying Latin and Greek definitely helped me develop a sense for that sort of historical resonance. So when I write the material for these videos, that etymological sensibility is never very far from the surface. But I should probably also say that while I was studying Latin and Greek, I also became fascinated with older forms of English, with antiquated words and expressions, and most especially with Shakespeare. However, I'd also say that my experience as a musician influences my writing quite a bit. And in fact, I often hear words in much the same way that I hear music. Basically, to me, every word is like a musical note or chord, each with its own distinct character and personality. And when words begin to follow one another in a beautiful, compelling way, they produce something like a melody of expression and meaning, as well as a kind of harmony in their subtle connotative effects. And like music, language can be emotionally evocative, and sometimes very powerfully so. Sometimes it gathers force like an oncoming storm, and words fall from the leaden sky like heavy raindrops. At other times, it whispers in the most delicate and intimate ways imaginable. And language has its own rhythms and tempos too, because sometimes words rush forth in a great irresistible torrent. And at other times, they meander, just taking their own sweet time, now don't they? And behind it all lies the hidden blank page of silence, which makes it possible for things like music and language to come into being in the first place. So when I'm writing, it very often feels like I'm composing music. That's because the basic elements of music and language seem so similar. Well, at least to me. And since I'm sometimes a very rationally, mathematically inclined person, I like to write things that make structural sense, things that are well organized and conceptually coherent. But at the same time, there's a rhapsodic poet that breathes inside of me. And so I really love to give voice to that when I write, because to me, words and ideas without feeling, without passion, and a deep, palpable relation to all that is life, well, they may be clever and intellectually astute, but at the end of the day, they don't usually amount to too much. At least not in my world. Anyhow, to me, the greatest source for that kind of feeling resides in the poetic side of language. That's mostly because I find that poetic language is the kind that's sometimes powerful enough to draw us toward life's outer horizon, where we can really learn and grow. And while I still care about lucidity and economy in my writing, what I really care about is speaking in a way that beckons us, all of us, including myself, toward the heart and center of human existence, toward the smoldering volcanic welter of life itself. Because what I really care about in writing is how words can change how we see things, how they can alter our perceptual fields and deepen our lives. So when I'm writing, I'm always searching for those rare and radiant phrases that can somehow find their way into our bloodstream and propel us beyond ourselves. You know, in my lectures at the university, I sometimes tell my students that all of the abstruse ideas and texts and fancy vocabulary I teach them ultimately boil down to only two things: life and death. That's it. And when my students manage to learn something worthwhile about life and death in our time together, I feel like it's a great, resounding victory for all concerned. But that's also how I feel about these YouTube videos, including this one. They're all ultimately about life and death. And as for the rest, well, the rest is really just a combination of pretext and ornamentation. Whew. Well, okay, I guess that now you know all my secrets, or at least the most important ones. Anyhow, thanks as always for taking the time to watch and listen, and for living and dying with me in this world. And as always, take care of your soul.